If you've been told to pull up your socks, then make sure it's a pair of TNT socks. The TNT shop is now open at tntradio.live. This is the Patrick Henningsen Show on TNT Radio.
We're in the second hour of this live broadcast. I'm Patrick Henningsen, your host, and we're going to switch gears right now over to the United States of America. I want to welcome onto the program political consultant, professional troublemaker, among other things, a great voice in terms of what's really going on behind the scenes in U.S. politics, Dustin Stockton, America Mission. Welcome back to the program, Dustin.
What's up, Patrick? Long time no word. Always good to see you, man.
And live in the flesh. It's great to see you, Dustin. And yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm just glad that you survived the Clips apocalypse yesterday. Thank God we made it.
I'm surprised we're all still here, Dustin. We had CERN opening up a portal to the netherworld. We had the eclipse, the red heifer. Everything was happening on Monday, so it was an eventful Monday. So yes, we should count our blessings that we're all here in one piece on Tuesday. But I hope you've been well, Dustin. And I speak for everybody when I say this is the weirdest election cycle I've ever experienced in my life. It doesn't, first of all, Dustin, it doesn't feel like an election. That's the first thing. Secondly, nobody knows what's happening from one moment to the next. And I wanted to kind of tap your brain on this. Like, how are you looking at this situation right now? What would we normally be doing at this time of the year in the heat of a general election? I mean, not what we're doing now, right?
No. Well, so this year is particular. It's almost anticlimactic at this point because Trump is the runaway nominee of the Republican Party. That, to be honest, it was never really a competition. Trump was always going to win, and he was always going to win in dominating fashion. So normally this would be like the height of primary season. We would be in between Super Tuesday. The field would have narrowed down to 2 or 3 candidates, but it's almost like we have 2 incumbents. Because Trump, right, the way 2020 went, there was no way Republicans were going in any other direction. And on the left, they know that they can't have anyone challenge Joe Biden, right? It would not take anyone. I mean, Kamala Harris could make Joe Biden look stupid in a debate right now. Right? Like the risk is too great. So they weren't going to risk it and didn't allow any real competition on the left either. And so in the first time in my life, this is the first time we haven't had a competitive primary in either of the 2 major parties. And the result of that is that it's kind of boring. Like at this point, we're left to speculate what's going to happen going forward. And maybe the most interesting thing, it seems pretty clear to me that Robert F. Kennedy is going to get more votes than any third-party candidate probably in my lifetime.
Really?
And the impact of that is going to be substantial. And I think it's going to be incredible for President Trump. I've been thinking a lot about, right, because the primaries are boring, we're left to speculate. Joe Biden understands that if he leaves office, they are going to throw him and his family and his staff so far under the bus and then roll back over them several times, because that's how Democrats operate. When you're no longer useful, they will dispose of you. But everybody kind of assumes, and I think wisely so, that there's a really good chance that Joe Biden is not going to be the person on the general election ballot. And so it begs the question, a lot of people think that it's going to be Michelle Obama. A lot of people think that it's going to be Gavin Newsom. A lot of people think it's going to be Kamala Harris. I actually think that if Joe Biden were not to be somehow, through either death or removal or resigning, I think that they might find a way to go back to RFK. And my thinking on it is, having worked for presidential campaigns, this will be the first time I haven't worked for a presidential campaign and a presidential season in nearly 20 years. And for me, The the interesting thing about it is that you have to build actual infrastructure and relationships in the lead up to the general election. You have to have state groups everywhere, and it takes real time to build that. It's not something that you could just snap your fingers or wave a magic wand and create. And so my current working conspiracy is if they remove Joe Biden, somehow RFK, the old Air America host himself, will somehow find a way back to the Democrat Party.
Wow. Okay, I didn't see that coming, because the most bizarre part about the RFK story, and I want to get your estimation. I know you're a good numbers guy, Dustin, of what you think if he ran as independent versus a Trump and a Biden, what sort of percentage, what sort of numbers could he expect to get? But then putting that aside, secondly, I want to ask you that him being ceremoniously booted out, it seemed to me, pushed out of the Democratic Party last year to keep him out of the primaries when he was polling at 18-20%. That was a disaster for the Biden campaign. But that, to me, I've never seen anything like that. And then this write-in ballot with Joe Biden in the primaries, they threw a hand grenade in their own Democratic primary process. This has never happened before in history, Dustin. So on those 2 points, can you elaborate a little bit?
Sure. So number one, as far as them throwing a grade, it just speaks to how weak Joe Biden is, right? That they can't let Cenk Uygur have a chance, right? They're so concerned that like literally you could drag Marianne Williamson and like throw the party into chaos forever. Right, and she'll try to like use crystals to heal the country and stuff. To RFK, I've known RFK a long time. I worked on the movie Vaxxed, right, which he was instrumental in. I was part of a group with Dr. Andy Wakefield, who were supposed to help set up the Vaccine Safety Council in the first Trump administration, and they were part of my like inauguration group. And so I've known Bobby for, man, quite a long time. I've talked to him several times over the course of the year. I've also had and started to receive calls from mainstream reporters, right? The guys who like to cover me about like January 6th and politics and other stuff. And they are freaked out. I mean, I've heard that the actual numbers in a Trump versus Biden versus Kennedy race have Trump solidly in the 40s, have Biden down in the low 30s, and have Kennedy in the high teens to mid 20s.
Wow. This is unseen before. This is like you have to go back to the 19th century, possibly, to see a split like this. So is that, I mean, how would that happen, though? I mean, I could see that would make sense from a Democratic point of view, but would that make more sense than shoehorning in Gavin Newsom, for instance? I mean, they are ruthless, by the way, and desperate, so I wouldn't really rule anything out, but I do see the Bobby Kennedy angle working for them. But how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, so on Gavin Newsom in particular, which is if it's not going to be Joe Biden, and there's the whole RFK getting booted and reunification thing isn't some like political theater, right, to attract attention and for him to go garner sympathy from the right, which when I look at the way his campaign has gone very early on, he was very focused on medical freedom and free speech and a bunch of issues that would appeal to the right. And so this could be really brilliant political tactics if it is RFK. But if it's not RFK and it's not Joe Biden, then it has to be Kamala Harris, because the left is pigeonholed into identity politics. And so if you are going to remove the first Black, Jamaican, Indian, Filipino, lesbian, or polyamorous vice president of all time and remove her with a white man, you are going to do a whole bunch of damage, in specifically with Black women voters. And one place that the Democrats are bleeding to President Trump as a result of the lawfare against him is in the Black community. And so to me, I think Gavin Newsom desperately wants to be the presidential candidate, but I think the left is pigeonholed because of the radical nature of their identity politics and not being able to go that route.
Ouch. This looks like a suicide kamikaze run, basically. I mean, who would be polling better? I would think Newsom's polling better than Harris, right? If you're going by the numbers.
I haven't seen any hypothetical matchups as far as like Harris or Newsom. I imagine that they've run some of those internally, but it's key demographics at this point. And right, good political consultants know that the numbers are not where they are now, are nowhere close to what they'll be come general election time. And the same, I'll add this on the piece about RFK. To have that much momentum at this stage in the game, his ground game is incredibly strong. He is putting the work in, doing podcasts and bypassing like the big tech and the traditional media who are pretending like he doesn't exist. I've watched his campaign grow. And I see them laying down a very serious foundation. And I would not be surprised at all if come August-ish, that we don't see a three-way race where people have to start accepting the idea that it's not out of the realm of possibility entirely. The third-party candidate could be competitive. And the moment that happens, the whole political landscape can shift. And again, I think it's really, really positive for President Trump because his base is if the 90-something whatever indictments haven't fazed them, if the unrelenting attacks of the media, if the censorship from the big tech oligarchs, if none of that has phased like the base for President Trump, that they're not going to stray to go to Joe Biden or RFK or anybody. And so a three-way race, I think, really benefits President Trump and might be the best chance he has to get in the current system.
Okay, so then let me ask you this. That said, whatever happens on the left side of the aisle, or if RFK moves into the Democratic lane late in the game, like you said, this would be an anomaly, but it's possible it would shift the whole landscape of politically. But with Trump, he's going to get the Republican vote anyway, no matter who he picks as a vice presidential candidate. So would he be looking for a strategic selection for the VP in order to garner more people from the fence or from a demographic that maybe would have voted for him, but the cringe factor is, I'm talking about white suburban women. Okay, like let's just put the cards on the table. This is a key demographic for anybody to get elected. Dustin, what do you see on the Trump VP side? Who looks favorable?
Well, so Trump's pick of Mike Pence as his vice president may have been the smartest political strategy decision he made at any point. Where Trump had issues was with the evangelical community, who are incredibly well organized politically. Their get out the vote is second to none. Their ability to activate volunteers and donors is really important. And Trump, coming off the Billy Bush tape, had significant danger there. And Mike Pence was the pick to shore that up. At this point, I'm not sure that there's anybody that adds too much significantly, as far as regional politics or with a specific demographic. I think Trump needs to go with somebody who is somewhat counter to his personality, somebody with a steady, calm, and surgical tactician and practitioner. And so I personally, I hope that he picks Dr. Ben Carson. I think Dr. Ben Carson really did an excellent job at HUD. I think he's an incredibly, he's almost like human volume. Listening to him, he's not the most excitable person, but he's also not all that likely to cause too many problems. But he is also fiercely loyal. And I think for Trump, because the battle is going to be about loyalty. And what Trump, I think, learned in his first administration is if you're not surrounded by people who are loyal to you first and foremost, it's going to cause problems that you can't foresee. And so I like that he's battle tested. I love that he's part of Old Glory Bank, which I finally got a bank account after years because Dr. Ben Carson and John Rich and Larry Elder came together and opened a bank for people like me. And so I might be a little biased because it was nice to be able to, I don't know, participate in the economy and stuff.
Well, it's funny that Ben Carson's name is in the sort of short list because you remember when he ran in 2016, his ground game out of the gates was very impressive. I remember going to events here in Arizona and seeing his people all around the country, and the type of people that supported Ben Carson when he came out early in his campaign were the same exact type of people that would be drifting to Robert F. Kennedy. Very similar types of the profile was very similar. He had a kind of a although he's conservative, he had kind of a nonpartisan air about him, which I think that was the attraction to Ben Carson. So if Donald Trump did select someone like Ben Carson, that would be an incredibly canny move from a sort of mathematical perspective there. What about a female pick? There's quite a few eligible females on the dating market for the Donald. If you were to choose, if you were to swipe right, is it swipe right or swipe left? I forgot.
I'm not sure, but my pick for that is one that I don't hear too many people talk about a lot, but who I personally adore, and I think she's done an amazing job as the governor of Arkansas. Sarah Huckabee Sanders as press secretary was rock solid, and what she has done for education and cutting the budget and the other reforms that she's brought forward in Arkansas during her tenure as governor, I think it's very solid. And because of the Huckabee's really, really deep reach into the evangelical communities, I could see Trump making the same play or having some of the same concerns that led him to the Pence pick, obviously not going with Pence. And so if I was going with a female, I think most of the other females, the issue might be that they tend to be firebrands in the same way that Trump is. Sarah Huckabee can be a firebrand, but she's also polished. And I think Trump really, the vice presidential pick can't do you a lot of good, but they can cause you a lot of problems. And so for me, I think he's got to go with somebody who has shown that they can handle the intensity of media scrutiny and questions that presents themselves well and has put together some kind of record. And for me, it's Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
And that's also interesting that so Carson, Sanders, two people that resonate with the evangelical vote. There's another demographic here that people don't talk about, Dustin. That's the Mormon vote. And I know the Mormon vote had issues with Trump after Billy Bush weekend. And to shore up support from that community, which straddles 4 states, and very strong in Utah, obviously, but also in Arizona, also in Nevada, and parts of California as well. I don't know if California is going to be up for grabs or not, but probably not. But down ballot, maybe it might make a difference. But that's a demographic people underrate. The Mormon vote is actually really crucial, more so than ever before, especially with the new swing states in play, Nevada and Arizona, Dustin. So I see Sanders and Carson as performing well with the Mormon vote. I don't know if you agree or not. You've spent time in this part of the country, so you know this. You know what their attitudes are on politics. What do you think?
Oh, for sure. So I come from some Mormon roots, right? My family actually goes all the way back to Brigham Young. I'm not personally part of the church, but I think both Sanders and Dr. Carson. I've also noticed that both of them have put considerable time traveling and speaking at temples and like Mormon temples and churches, and have shored themselves up and presented themselves. And I also like that neither of them have been active or publicly seeking the office, right? I think both of them are playing the game in a way that is smart and it's subtle. And again, for me, out of that first administration, I think Trump needs to find somebody that he's familiar with, that he has absolute confidence in, and has shown nothing but loyalty along the way. And I think both of those shore that up. And as far as the Mormons, I mean, if it's Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, I mean, that say what you will about Trump's morals and like the playboy lifestyle that he lived, you would be hard pressed to find somebody more crooked than Joe Biden. And I think for any church going person or any person with any basis or standing of morality is going to have to look at just the absolute chaos and mess that is Hunter or Joe Biden. And right, no more telling than that than Hunter Biden's laptop, right? And the perversion, the degeneracy, and the corruption all over the world. And so I don't know if we're playing Trump versus Biden, even with Kennedy in the mix. I don't see how somebody goes to church. It's like I'm gonna pull the lever for old child Sniffy McSniffer, right? Like it just hard to see how that goes.
No, and it does, and he's constantly pulling his Catholic credentials as well. And I know a lot of Catholics have got some issues with that. They don't like it, actually, maybe even slightly offended by it. So, I mean, this is, yeah. So Joe Biden, in terms of the moral choice there, I tend to agree with you in a big way there. And the basically what the Bidens are going to have to face up to, if look, let's just say hypothetically, Dustin, if Biden were to pull out another 3 a.m., that graph that goes like that, if he's to pull off one of these again, he's most certainly going to face probably a Republican majority in the Senate, maybe even in the House, and probably multiple impeachments. I mean, I don't see him lasting past the spring anyway. So it's just going to be an absolute vice grip for the Democrats. I mean, there's no escape based on the evidence that's on the table now. I want to talk about the election integrity issue. Are we allowed to talk about that election? We'll call it election integrity. We won't call it fraud or malfeasance or anything like that. We'll call it election integrity after the break. I'm with Dustin Stockton, political consultant. We're gaming out the 2024 election. There's some interesting things to look into here, and one of them is going to be what's going to happen on Election Day. We'll talk about that and more after the break here at TNT, Today's News Talk. I'm Patrick Henningsen. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Abel.
I often forget to mention that he's an amputee because Abel will try any activity he can.
My arm helps me with basically everything.
He doesn't see what he can't do, he sees what he can do.
Yeah, okay. This is helping.
The War Amps has just given him the ability to do all the activities every kid can do.
When you donate to the War Amps, you help kids like me. Thank you.
With a compelling perspective on global politics, this is the Patrick Henningsen Show on TNT Radio.
All right, folks, we're back. Final segment of the final hour here, and we're talking about the United States general election coming up. It's the strangest election that anybody I know has ever experienced in their entire life. Is the most unusual. Doesn't feel like an election, as I'm talking to political consultant Dustin Stockton and his great organization, America Mission. And Dustin, on the issue, this is the big worry people have. Everyone sees the polls. Donald Trump is doing incredibly well, but he was also performing incredibly well in 2020. And it looked like he had a commanding lead on Joe Biden going into Election Day in 2020, despite COVID, despite the BLM riots, despite all of that. Donald Trump ran a better campaign, despite maybe having, excuse me for saying this, but possibly the worst campaign manager ever in 2020, a total train wreck. It didn't matter. Donald was commanding into Election Day. He just beat all the odds. But the results on Election Day just didn't go in his favor, and everyone has a lot of questions. A lot of people were vindicated in 2022, where we saw the same exact issues with the midterms, denying Carrie Lake and every other down ballot candidate in Arizona. So we know that there's unresolved issues. What do you see on this front in 2024? Have any of these things been resolved from the hangover from 2020 in terms of, quote, election integrity?
So in that umbrella of election integrity, there are a lot of different components. And some of them have been fixed, and some of them have not been fixed or addressed. And so Trump's got to win, and he's got to win by more than what is fair. I will say, however, that I encourage people. Why I encourage people to still continue to vote, and why it still matters. Yes, the machines are still running, but the larger the margin that they have to make up, the more danger and risk that it blows up the entire system. And they understand that. It took a combination, right? And they brag about this in a famous Molly Ball Time magazine article about the secret campaign to, quote, fortify the election, not steal it. We were fortifying against Donald Trump. They did the same thing against Bolsonaro in Brazil. The same people did the same thing. That they have a problem this time, and a lot of that, which is we have been and will continue to dismantle significant parts of the censorship industrial complex and the intelligence community's psychological warfare operation that has been waged against the American people in the lead up to 2020. So the some of the reasons I'm encouraged is that they do not have a total bottleneck on getting information out, because Elon Musk is allowing people like me to speak on Twitter again, right? So that we've got a slight win there. I think that the media's credibility has been shredded to the point that even compared to their terrible credibility in 2020, I think that's been largely reduced, and people are looking outside. And we have developed alternative systems in order to communicate and spread messaging, primarily by partnering with the crypto communities. So I am very low. After being debanked, I was forced to go to crypto to be able to keep myself afloat. And I'm extremely active in a variety of crypto communities. I can tell you, Trump tokens right now are the hottest thing that people like. Everybody's loving Trump. You can't get somebody to buy a Joe Biden token. And that community, who is incredibly tech savvy, has been working to build outside ways in order to spread messages. So right now, I'm the community leader of a project called Hunter Biden's Laptop on Solana. And what we're doing is we are disseminating through memes and through video clips, and through the value of this token, what was actually on Hunter Biden's laptop in a way that can't be censored, right?
Okay,
and
so sort of like ordinals, you're putting data on chain. Is that what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so we launched a quote unquote meme token, right, called Hunter Biden's Laptop. We ran to almost $10 million in market cap. I think we're saying 1.5 right now. We've done the retrace with everybody else. But it's allowed us to put together an entire team of people who are going through the laptop and turning it into, right? I mean, Hunter Biden's literally a crackhead. I mean, we've been calling April Crackhead Visibility Month, because for every trans person, there are 6 crackheads, Patrick. And I think it's about time that they got the recognition that they deserve.
They need to be seen. They need to be seen.
I mean, their hero, Hunter Biden, heroically documented the struggle of the crackhead. I mean, having to fight the prostitutes when they try to short your bag of crack cocaine. We have that on video. We have all this stuff on video. And what's wild is that as this project has grown, over the last 2 or 3 weeks, thousands of people have told me, that's not real, is it? That wasn't really what was on the laptop, is it? And what it shows is that the censorship worked. And what it also shows is that we have to continue to find ways to disseminate information that doesn't go through the old gatekeepers, programs like yours and TNT Radio. By the way, I love me some Joseph Arthur. I've been doing his show like at least once a month. Me and my man Joseph, like holding it down on the weekends. Great to see you in the new time slot, by the way. But we have been active. This hasn't been one of those things where 2020 happened and we're like, oh, well, we're just, back to the drawing board. Like for us, we immediately started to put together investigations and deep dives into things like the CTI League and the Disarm Framework. We have people inside their organizations, inside their mainframes, inside their tech. And we put that information in front of Andrew Bailey and the Missouri v. Biden team, in front of the House Oversight Committee on Weaponization of Government. And we have plenty of shots to fire as far as disrupting the ways in which they were able to attack us in the lead up to 2020. Right? I was held at gunpoint 2 months before the 2020 election. The same day I was debanked and I was censored off all of my largest social media, like all in the same day. It was a coordinated attack against effective right-wing activists who would, instead of being able to do the typical campaigning and state-by-state tours and candidate interviews and get out the vote activities, I was busy dealing with lawyers and wondering how I was going to survive. And that was intentional. And we have fortified ourselves this time against those kinds of tactics. And so I've tried to figure out exactly like the voting machine issue. But for me, it comes down to this. The votes come in. There's a black box where no one's allowed to see inside. And then on the other side, we get the results. Now, I think that's insane. I think it's ripe for corruption, even if it's not corruption already. Like it gives people absolutely no peace of mind if they want to. And we see the left and the right over the last few presidential elections. Whoever loses claims that it was stolen. Right? Hillary thought that the machines were working against her, and they launched this big thing into it. So we haven't fixed that everywhere. Some states have been moving to paper ballots and to take some other steps that might help fortify that. But I don't think that they can steal it if public perception is that it's a runaway. And so I think we have to go above and beyond, but I think we are well positioned for them not to be able to take control of the public perception the way that was necessary for them to do what they did in 2020.
So looking at the key swing states, looking at let's just name them, like Atlanta, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, maybe Minnesota, but Nevada and Arizona, especially. Looking at these, I might have left one or two out. I don't think Ohio is going to be a swing state this year. I think it's going to go pretty strongly red, thanks to J.D. Vance. But looking at the swing states, which is the worst cesspool of corruption where you're the most concerned about?
It's a hotly contested race for most corrupt in that litter. For me, I'd probably have to go basically 1A and 1B between Georgia and Arizona. I mean, Katie Hobbs and Arizona, and because of the population concentration in the state in Maricopa County, I think that it is particularly ripe for shenanigans. And because Brian Kemp is the governor of Georgia, and Stacey Abrams, who the left upholds as basically she had cracked the code to figure out how to get more votes than were available and stuff. To me, it's pretty close. Both of those are very concerning. And then Pennsylvania is another one that I haven't seen take the kind of significant measures that a lot of the other quote unquote swing states have. But if I'm Donald Trump, and I've got to be looking to expand the map in a couple places. At a minimum, force the Biden campaign to spend money. And I think RFK could be the opening for that. I think RFK plays well in states like Colorado that are left but are range states. Nevada would be another one, right? And both Colorado and Nevada have not been in play in 3 election cycles, presidential election cycles. And I think that could be, those 3 states could be reliably blue states that in a Trump Biden RFK matchup, Trump has a really good chance of running away with.
Colorado, interesting you bring that up, because the math does look like it would reflect exactly what you're saying there. I'd say almost Washington State with Eastern Washington, the Spokane area, and then Oregon has some huge red swaths through it, but still it's not enough to overcome the liberal metropolitan bastions of Seattle and Portland, but definitely Colorado, Dustin.
Yeah, if I'm Trump, like Colorado is one place I'm absolutely looking to expand the map in, especially the 3-way race with RFK. I think that's, I think it could also open up some other Midwest states, or provide the ability to put less resources into states like Iowa that oftentimes Democrats are always on offense, right? We hear every year that they want to turn Texas blue and like all this other crazy stuff. I mean, maybe a state like New Jersey, right, with the Menendez stuff and just like the raw corruption going on, and then Trump's roots as a New Yorker. That might be one other state that I think that could surprise people by being competitive in a 3-way race.
I think so. And Virginia might also be competitive, which was very close in the last election as well, last 2 elections. And with Glenn Youngkin's governor victory, there's kind of a little bit of a signal there of how Virginia might go. That's actually a key swing state, Virginia. And if you consider
14 electoral votes.
Yeah, it's significant. So that's definitely up for grabs. So yeah. Well, right now you said it's boring right now watching all of these legal cases, Donald Trump and Stormy Daniels being revived and all the rest of it. But when it comes down to election day, it's going to be anything but boring, no matter who's on the ticket. That's for sure. So I think we can be rest assured that's going to be the case. But expect some swings and roundabouts, right, Dustin? I mean, there's going to be there's always surprises, right, in election year.
So the first thing I tell presidential candidates when they've brought me on to their staff, right? I abide by a rule. There will be 3 things that happen that absolutely no one expects, that absolutely change the dynamic of the race. And our job as your campaign is to be flexible, to be able to adjust to whatever those unforeseen shifts are going to be, because they happen every year. Right. Every election cycle, and really even down ballot races, right? There's always just, right. It could be war. It can be disaster. It could be economic, right? Like McCain getting absolutely railroaded when the housing market collapsed, and right, just absolutely sounded like somebody had no clue what was going on. And Obama had been briefed by the best of Wall Street about credit default swaps and could speak eloquently on it. I mean, that there's going to be a lot of things, and we are living in a world on the brink, thanks to, in large part, Joe Biden, his weakness, and his insane spending and foreign policies. We have to stop funding the killing of people all over the world, and it's another thing that I think Trump has that no other Republican I can think of, either presidential or senatorial, at a minimum, statewide candidates. Trump has that other candidate. He can claim the anti-war flag. He's the only president in my lifetime who didn't start or expand war. The world was dramatically more peaceful with his foreign policy. He started to reduce how much money we were giving to NATO and these other countries. He was threatening to close these World War II hangover military bases all over the world, and put the focus back on America and stop sending our resources to kill people all over the world. And so for me, as somebody who is vehemently anti-war, right? I think Trump is the only answer at this point, because we have to stop sending our money to these countries, Ukraine and Israel and everybody else who just wants to blow up and kill everybody. It's got to stop.
Well, I think Trump has two strong cards to play, saying he can correct two disastrous situations in Ukraine and with Israel-Palestine straight away. That's an open goal, really two open goals, two good scores that he can make there on the international front. And I think on the domestic front, Dustin, I think people are pretty set in where they are on social and cultural issues. Maybe more people drifting conservative, really, to be honest. But that's pretty set. And I think there's a consensus that the inflation that we've all experienced over the last couple of years is ridiculous and needs to come to an end, because it is threatening, the ability of people to actually make ends meet every month. It's pretty shocking. I've been out of the country and back in, and looking at the difference in prices in a 2-year period. I'm shocked at what it cost for a tuna sandwich and a bag of chips. It's just ridiculous. So that's something that I've never experienced in my life. Not, I was too young for the 70s, but I don't even think it was that bad based on what people are telling me.
Yeah, no, this Great Depression level stuff. All right, and it's terrible. But I think you're right about the social issues. I think if there's two issues that could really move the electorate. One is immigration. I think we are seeing the strain that the unfettered, open borders policy of the Democrats is even putting a strain in, right, like inner cities and places that are blue. And I think that it could have a particular impact with the black vote, because it's very damaging for them. And the other big issue that I could see is the lawfare, which is I think the lawfare makes Trump one of us who've had to deal with the courts, who've had to deal with the prosecution and the persecutions and the nonsense that's going on. And I think those two issues, if there's two issues that I think could move or surprise us as far as moving demographics, I think it's those two.
That makes him the underdog for sure. The lawfare and all the rest of it, well, we'll see how it plays out in the next couple of months. Dustin Stockton, appreciate your analysis, your viewpoints on this. Thank you for joining us on TNT.
Always great to see you. Love the new time slot. Man, crushing it. Good to see you, Patrick.
Thank you, Dustin Stockton. A big thank you to Middle Eastern journalist Layla Haitoum in the first hour. Fantastic analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you at the same time, same place tomorrow. We've got a few surprises for you on Wednesday you don't want to miss.